One of the corporations has trained up 30,000 employees on entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. Nothing happened. The robots can do all the mechanical work. The AI can do the business as usual easily. It can do the innovation. So what's left for us?
If you happen to be a leader who just got excited and enthused to invite everyone in the organization to share ideas about innovation, please hold on. Don't do it right away. I know that it may feel like the right thing to do. It may give you the excitement that you haven't felt in a while. It may make you feel energized because finally you just got the permission and the mandate to tap into the brilliance and wisdom of everybody inside the organization. If you collect ideas that don't solve anything, instead of inspiring those internal innovators that you aim to activate, you will do the opposite. You will disappoint them, erode the trust, and damage your own leadership. Just calling for ideas is the wrong place to start. This is the core message that my guest today has to share with me, with you, with everybody. She has spent her entire career inside corporate innovation, from very first idea management platforms to more elaborate entrepreneurship programs, which she has built herself from the ground up. She has designed what she calls a marketplace of problems, and she has seen firsthand the difference between the organizations that perform innovation and organizations that actually do it. She is Marta Jakab, a software engineer by training and an innovation leader by calling, who has helped corporations master the implementation of innovation and entrepreneurship programs. Marta says that she speaks 8 languages. I say she speaks 10, including the language of innovation and entrepreneurship. But I think her favorite language could be the 11th one, the one of problem solving, because this is what she identifies herself in. So I'm your host, Ileriana Caccianico, an innovation strategist at heart and the host of Activate Innovation Lounge. This is the podcast dedicated to all the leaders with or without innovation in title who want to activate innovators, innovation, and innovation culture. Follow us if this sounds like you. And now let's welcome Marta Jakab to the conversation. Marta Jakab, welcome to Activate Innovation Lounge. It is so thrilling for me to welcome you today because you know that I just admire you for everything you've done in your career. And above all, I admire how quickly we have connected on the both value and power of activating innovators in one way or the other, because you have done that for a good chunk of your careers while I was still doing other things. So instead of me introducing you to the audience, I love you to introduce yourself so people get to know you in your own words. So who is Marta Jakab?
Well, first of all, Irina, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure, and the admiration is reciprocal, and the joy of clicking with you so fast and agreeing on so many things, and just exchanging notes was amazing. So I'm thrilled to be here. And about myself, as a person, I think of myself as somebody who is curious and cares. I wouldn't want to define myself for my career, but professionally, I would like to be known at the stage as a problem person. And I will explain you why. So in innovation, I always try to chase problems, and I try to convince others that problems are powerful and we can unpack it. But I hope people will remember me as the problem person in a nice way.
That is very interesting, I have to admit. Yes, I've known you as a problem person, but not the person who causes problems, but the person who wants to solve them. But having been in the innovation space for so long in your career, why problem? What has happened throughout your journey that has convinced you to focus so much on the problem?
Because as we know, Liliana, people have ideas and ideas are cheap and everybody can find one. And When you start having ideas and listening to people ideas, you realize that actually, hang on, what's the problem we are solving here? So this compounded at, for example, a corporation level with thousands of people trying to come up with ideas is something that I found counterproductive, because ideas are not, in my opinion, are not the starting point of innovation. You have to solve something. You have to address a challenge. You have to um, use ideas for a purpose and with a view of, if it's a good idea, then it will make something better. So it will create value at the end. So that's why I always like to start from what is the problem we are trying to solve here, and how big it is. By that time, we know how much value the ideas or the solutions to it can create.
So are you saying that in the corporate world, there's a tendency to start with the ideas rather than the problem?
I think that's how innovation has been perceived and is still perceived in many places, sadly. So ideas are always something that we are trying to manage and call innovation, whereas the actual aim of innovation is to get something done, to make something better or different, or something that can create revenue or can create well-being, or both, but not just something that lives in ether and doesn't go anywhere. And that's why ideas are something that I like to take carefully.
So when do we call for ideas then? And I'm thinking right now, or maybe let me pull back. I'm thinking, if I come up with an idea, in my mind, the underlying of that idea is that I'm observing something is not working, or there's a friction, or something's wrong, that I'm thinking of an idea of how to solve it. But I might not be able to articulate it, that it's solving a problem. Could that be also the reason why maybe ideas were invited or get invited before inviting the problems or identifying the problem?
It depends on the circumstance, I think, because if you are thinking about something and coming up with something that you think it's a great idea, you can decide to make something out of it, set up a startup, right? It's your responsibility. So you go with it, and the market will tell you if it's a good idea or not. In a corporation, when you ask for ideas, you ask resources to invest time to come up with those ideas. And if you don't have a view of why you are asking for those ideas, you are wasting people's time, and you are wasting people's faith in you. You are wasting their trust. You are wasting their motivation, and you are telling them that by doing so, they are not important to you. And that's why I'm very cautious in a corporate environment, especially to start innovation with ideas.
I love that distinction, really do. And I agree with you because that's the entire idea. Well, why I love innovation challenges. But before we go further, then tell me, from your experience, how do we go to define the idea, the problem? How do we know which problem we're going to invite ideas for then?
So again, I would say let's break it down to see who you are. And this situational awareness is something that I find very valuable for successful innovation, because it looks differently. The problems, the solutions that you are looking for, they look differently if you are someone in a big organization who is trying to solve a big strategic problem, or if you are in a smaller team doing production activities or products, and you are trying to maybe place something on the market, or just solve a customer problem. So those kind of measures are have a difference of magnitude between them. So you always have to to see how you find and define a problem, depending on where you are, who you are, and what you're trying to achieve.
And once you have identified the problem and you know exactly what's the root cause to that problem, who needs to solve it? Who are the best people mandated to solve the problem, especially in the larger organization?
So again, depending on where you are in your innovation journey and what your innovation architecture looks like, you might have a central innovation team who you might call in to solve that problem, or you might want to open it to the whole organization or your immediate team, or a group of people within your organization, which is the grassroots version of innovation, or you even want to open it to the wild world and go for open innovation. So, and I think that is why innovation is so fascinating, because it has so many variables that you have to consider, and that's why it's so hard as well. So getting innovation right is not about being a genius, but about knowing about all these configurable little measures and components and factors that you have to go through and consider in order for the whole mechanism to work.
So, with that spectrum of solvers to a problem, could you distinguish what problems are best solved by the innovation team? Which ones are best solved by the employees, the grassroots innovations? Which ones could be best solved by the customers, maybe? And which ones could best be solved by the startups or, other independent innovators out there in the world, the crowd?
If I see the problem, I can tell you. I wouldn't say there is a formula. So it would be nice if we had the formula. And actually, we might be getting closer to that, because with LLMs, you can train them to suggest which one would be the best approach. But as a magic formula, I do not have one. So I would start, if you have a central innovation team and their time is worth compared to the value of the solution that their work will give you, then that's a good match. If you don't have too much resources or can't reach out to that team, and you think that your workforce, your immediate workforce, might have the solution, or it can start it off at least, then go for, say, grassroots innovation, go for a challenge, or open it to the whole organization. Depends again. Um, or if you know exactly that you don't have that kind of knowledge or capability internally, then definitely go for startups or open innovation, other companies, the ecosystem outside your organization.
So it is. That's interesting, and I agree with you, because at the end of the day, you need innovation. For innovation, you need knowledge. That's the foundation. You need a lot of knowledge, and when you open it up, the more open the pool, the more knowledge you are likely to attract to solving that problem. But it's the second time that you're mentioning the grassroots innovators, and you're bringing a smile to my face, because that's, what I'm passionate about, and what I'm always more curious to dig deeper, and especially in your case, because I know that you have run intrapreneurship programs. And when you run an intrapreneurship, you do recognize that employees do have both perspective of the problem and ideas of the solutions. So could you tell from your experience, what were the kinds of problems that were likely to be pursued to be solved by the intrapreneurs, the grassroots innovators within the organization who had the knowledge and had the drive to do something about that problem?
Of course. So for intrapreneurship, what I observed was that the people who came up with an idea were very conscious of a problem that they wanted to solve, and that is how the intrapreneurship program I set up was designed to work. But regardless, people who come as entrepreneurs, they would have that awareness. Okay, I have a problem, I see it, I'm really bothered by something not working, or observing customers having the friction and wanting to do something about it. So it's that kind of drive that comes naturally and gets you into action, that makes people find the problem. So they experience them, but it takes an entrepreneur to want to solve it.
And could you give an example of an interesting intrapreneurship story that brings a smile to your face? Like, as much as you can share about the process or the outcome of it.
Yeah, so there are many stories. I can give you an example that happened during COVID. Um, Someone was working in a technical role, and they had to go to the office. They had to travel by car. It was during lockdown. It was dangerous. It was exposing themselves and their family to the danger of COVID. So they came up with this idea of doing it remotely, automating that step, and just being able to solve the same problem by not going to the office. By and that problem was common to many of his colleagues. So about 100 people had the same problem, and it saved 100 people going and exposing their families and their neighborhood and their community. So the solution itself was so simple and easy, but the constraint of the danger brought it to the fore, and made this person to want to solve it for himself and for everyone else.
That is interesting. And because, like, what this reminds me also is sometimes it is the hardship that inspires creative thinking and problem solving. And what you're also highlighting here, and I think you mentioned this earlier as well, is that it's the frontline employees, and when they experience the problem themselves, that you see the innovators, coming from that pool of people. Because the more you experience the problem, the more likely that you get the drive to solve it. And when you encounter people like that in your organization, what needs to happen? Like, how do you position them for success? Or like, how do you first, what do you need to do to make sure that they will have the courage to come and ask, like, hey, I've seen this problem. I think this needs a new solution. What we have in place is not working. And I'm ready to take the lead to solve this, or to try to solve it, because the first attempt might not necessarily be successful. It's innovation, right? We don't know the outcome. So what needs to happen in any organization to set up this courage, to cultivate this courage of employees to come and share openly, like, I have a solution to something that we're experiencing?
So I would take a step back just to say that I think that every organization has a wonderful pool of entrepreneurs, whether they are known or not. That's up to the organization to discover and to find out. So there are lots of people who are always willing to change things around them for the better, and they always try to think about ways of doing so for themselves, for their customers. That's just their nature of being entrepreneurs. They are dreamers who do. And it comes down to the organization to want to tap into that richness. So um, once that decision is made, or once that desire is there, it's quite easy to set up a process, because a process is step 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a no-brainer. But the intent to do so is what makes innovative organizations more successful than the ones who are just sitting on a pile of gold and don't want to use it, because that's what entrepreneurs are, and that's what the workforce is full of good ideas and good observations, and ready to be tapped into.
So you mentioned the organization itself, but who in the organization needs to understand that the entrepreneurs are there, and they just need to start activating, to discover them and like shape a process? Like, is this the job, first of all, of entrepreneurs themselves? Or could this be the job of middle management leaders? Or could this be the mandate? Let me not call the job, just the mandate of maybe people who lead the innovation activities or innovation operations within the org? Or should this be the mandate of the executive suite?
I would say everyone, Iliriana. I think it has to start with the C-suite just to have that kind of awareness and readiness to give support for innovation to happen. If they are not behind it, it's not going to uh, be sustainable. So I experienced this many times. And if leadership is not in it, then it's just going to fizzle out at some point. Next down, management. So if you have an innovation team or an innovation lead, director, whatever that role is called, someone who is responsible to design the infrastructure, the structure of your innovation system. So decide whether you have grassroots innovation enabled, such as challenges or intrapreneurship, or whether you have an internal team that supports the rest of the organization, or decentralized teams, or open innovation. That's the job of someone who designs the whole innovation infrastructure within the company. And then you have the execution arm, who are the people who then enable the daily activities. They design the process, or you can design the process one step up from there, but you have to put that mechanism into action. And then you have all the advocates who are the ones who spread the word. So it's a comms part of the organization, together with people who are genuinely interested in supporting and making it successful. So it takes a village to grow an innovation program.
And once you grow, like, you gotta be innovative even with the program. So we mentioned the intrapreneurship program, we mentioned the innovation challenges, but from your experience, could you tell what have been some interesting forms of activating innovators in addition to these two that have worked either with the clients that you worked in the past or the organizations that you worked? Like, what are some of the initiatives that stand out in your mind as something valuable to cultivate or to replicate further, because they do bring forth this talent that is already there?
Sure. So I can speak about something I tried myself. And again, this came up during COVID. So when I implemented the entrepreneurship program in an organization, I observed that leadership wasn't convinced about wanting to create such a movement. They were not against it, but they were not behind it either. So instead of trying to push innovation, and I didn't even call it innovation, I called it entrepreneurship, I tried to approach them from the perspective of what keeps you up at night. Do you have something that you really want to solve, and really bothers you and really stands in the way of you being successful? And that makes it personal. That makes them think, okay, so what keeps me up at night actually? And they bring you the problems. And once they bring you the problem, you're good. Because if you say, okay, I can take your problem and see what happens, I can try it out and discuss it with people, and maybe we can find a solution. So from there, you have that freedom of trying to get a community around that problem and see who comes up with a good solution for it. And that is what creates a marketplace. So I did this, I scaled this approach by asking every leader, okay, can you give me a couple of your problems that keep you up at night? And I made a little table or portfolio of problems. And from there, the other side of the creators and entrepreneurs gathered and said, wow, I like that problem and I like the other one as well. So I'm going to address this. So they were thinking about the several problems at the same time, and they were trying to solve them either together or individually, and that's how they started on an entrepreneurship journey. And then we put behind them the processes, the tools, the training, and set them up for this journey, which produce some of the innovative ideas that came out of the program.
What you're highlighting is something that I've been observing, and sometimes I'm starting like not doubting, but like questioning my own self when it comes to using the term innovation itself. With no matter how much we love it, I think that we should drop the use of the term innovation until it has happened. Because if it's about solving problems, let's focus on that, because that's how we galvanize people, the leadership, the sponsorship, the support, the engagement. And then just as the International Standards Organization in the explanations of the standards states that innovation is an outcome, go and just recognize it after it has happened. Don't invite people to innovate, invite people to problem solve. And only after they have solved the problem, go like, you know what? You have just innovated a solution. This is novel solution. This qualifies as an innovation, and then based on some of my guests that have shared and our friends, like just define, what innovation is so people know. But what you're also highlighting now is something very important. You set up a really good process to invite to identify the problems that require some urgency to solving. Then you ground the intrapreneurship program on solving those problems. You invite the ideas, and then what? Like what needs to be in place, like the scaffolding to make sure that those ideas see a future beyond the ideation stage. What are some ways that it works well in large organizations? Again,
you have to have a why. So the way I solved it in the program was that the person who brought the problem, they also brought the money, or at least the intent to put money or resources behind it. So I would ask them, so how big a problem is this, and how much would you pay? Almost like negotiating. Okay, let me test. Is this a real problem, or are you just making it up? So if they were willing to sacrifice their budget or sacrifice resources or negotiate resources from somewhere else to put behind that problem, that was a proof that they wanted it solved. Otherwise, if you don't want it solved, then you probably would just go into innovation theater, and we can talk about innovation theater for hours, but that's what it becomes. So you have to have that intent and ability to do whatever it takes. If it's a good idea, if it solves your problem, then commit to realize it.
So there is a budget then, and the idea has come. So the person who owns the problem is the leader of business unit A, and the idea for the solution, let's say that it comes from business unit B or C. So who owns the implementation, and what needs to be in place to ensure that with the budget in place, there is a good implementation process or to further develop that idea into a solution? A testable one, at least.
That should be part of the intrapreneurship program. So you have to define that upfront, and it can have many flavors. So it might be that it will be area D or E who can execute it. You have to come together. So I think the best way to get to execution is that when the sponsor with their knowledge and the solver with their knowledge combine and work as a team to get D or E on board to execute it. So they hold that idea until it's done, until it's out in the real world and it works.
So then what you're saying is that the ideator could be solver too.
Yes, of course it could, or they could recruit a team. So that depends on personality, I would say. So if the ideator is an intrapreneur, then an intrapreneur is like an entrepreneur, but in a big company. And they are the person who can fight for their idea. They could present it. They could convince others. They could bring in resources. They are networkers, negotiators, diplomats, politicians, and creators at the same time.
I think that I believe that every ideator could be a solver too, but depends on the circumstances of the organization and depends on whether they have the interest to work on the development beyond ideating. But the way that you're explaining me this, like what it makes me think is that you can have an innovation challenge and you can invite ideas from everybody to share how they see the solution of that particular problem. And then if they demonstrate or communicate the interest to be part of solving that problem, then they can go automatically into the intrapreneurship program. So intrapreneurship could be just an added value, an avenue of how you engage the activated innovators in an organization.
Definitely.
But then not every organization has intrapreneurship programs. So how do we inspire leaders to set or to start intrapreneurship programs? Like imagine like I'm a CEO, my company has 5,000 employees, we have everything but innovation operation, and you and I meet at a conference, the industry conference, let's call it education or something. And then you go like, oh, you need an intrapreneurship program. How would you convince me to start one and come become my advisor?
Well, I would go bolder, and I would say if you don't have innovation, you need a whole program, you need a whole portfolio. I would try to sell you everything, because depending on the problem, you might need to activate one lever or the other. So you might need the whole organization to put their minds to it, or you might need the core team of specialists to put their minds to it, or you might need to go outside. So I think the biggest mistake that organizations who set up a program, an innovation program, and put a lot of money into it, is that they do it one-sided. So they only set up an entrepreneurship program, let's say, and every problem, every idea goes through it. And not all problems are suited for that. Some problems can only be solved with outside resources. Yeah, you might be able to solve that problem with entrepreneurship. It would take you 3 years or 6 months, but you might go outside and you can solve it in 2 weeks with someone who is out there and can come up with an idea very easily. So on the contrary, if you have something very specific to your business and you only have open innovation, you can put it out there as much as you want, but all the solutions would be out of context, because they don't have your internal knowledge, they don't have your history, they don't have all the tacit intelligence that is relevant to your business. So again, every problem needs its own, not only its own solution, but its own way of going about it through some type of innovation or the other.
This sounds like a very long-term effort, Marta. It's not something, I thought that this is something that I could solve with a single intervention.
Well, you can solve one thing with one intervention and then leave it there. So you had a gig, and that's what it is. Or if you want to do innovation sustainably or over time, and make sure it's there anytime you need it, as a function to allow your business to reach their goals, reach your strategic goals, and growth, and all the objectives you have, plus all the problems you have. Then you have to make it sustainable over time. So you have to have an infrastructure, you have to design it, you have to have all these kind of flavors that you can activate based on what you're trying to achieve.
I think you're alluding that I need to have to focus on building a very innovative culture, and so if I'm to start, do I need a centralized department for innovation to do so, or should I just invite everybody to find their own problems, solve them, and come up with demonstration of their micro innovations? How do I start?
I would say neither, because if you hire a central team, and depends on their mandate, but they would try to do their innovative activities in a closed circle. So you would have that kind of expertise pool, but probably that requires time and requires intent to go out and socialize with your business, get to know your company well, and trying to so that they can come up with innovation that is useful. On the other hand, if you just ask for ideas from everyone, might not work either. So I think you have to have a balance, and depending on your and the nature of your business, you can start small, but you have to spread it a little bit. So um, okay, you might have limited resources, so where do you start? Maybe that's the question we are trying to answer here. And I think it's just a matter of balancing that kind of portfolio. So have some experts who can support the rest and can scale with time. Make sure that they are not in a bubble and doing their own thing and getting in conflict with your business as usual, who will try to defend their own turf.
What you're highlighting here, I think that it is essential, because I've seen things like that. And that essential thing is like, if you're starting a program like that for the first time, don't try to do it on your own. Just get help from the outside to get you started, and then cultivate your own internal capabilities to help you grow and take it from there. Because like, I have a feeling and observation that sometimes we tend to really underestimate what does it take to lead an innovative effort in an organization, and go like, oh, I'll just call for ideas. But suggestion box is not innovation. And so getting some help from the outside to get you started properly will shorten the time to results for both the organization and the people. And so we're coming with this to that, like the people. One thing that I've been personally starting to kind of question myself again is, we talk about building and cultivating innovation cultures in an organization, but then I'm coming across the term innovation capabilities. And I'm wondering, from your extensive experience, do we distinguish between these two? Do we try to build both of them? How do they relate to each other? Do we want to have innovation capabilities established across all the organizations, or do we want the culture, or do we want both? Like, how, and all with purpose of like, how do we guide leaders that have started contemplating with thoughts of like, how to make my organization more innovative? And so do we help like that ultimate longer term vision? Do we want to help them build innovation cultures, or do we want them to help build innovation capabilities?
I think this looks like so the right answer based on statistics and observation is you have to do both. So you have to combine them like a DNA a kind of spiral. So you build a little bit of one, and then you build a little bit of the other, and then they reinforce and grow. So I would say that if you build a capability first and there's no culture, it will die, it will fizzle out. Because, excuse me, the culture is so important to have that mindset that allows innovation to flourish. If you have that stance and attitude from the people you're trying to involve in innovation, that's a good start. Because then things will come slowly but surely. They will come. People will try to do according to common sense, so they would try to innovate according to their perceived common sense, and then you can help them achieve the knowledge and the skills to do it in a more effective way, so you can optimize for effectiveness, and then add a little bit more culture as a reinforcement so that they grow together. I don't know what you think about it. I would be curious because you have a great experience in this as well.
I think I don't have a finite answer to this one. I'm still thinking with when I think about innovation capabilities, I feel like a combination of talent, people, processes, meaning as individuals, we come out of school, we come with great new knowledge acquired, and then we continuously refine our own capabilities to use that knowledge and create solutions and do good throughout career. but that is not stagnant. We need to learn constantly. So like elevating those capabilities is enabling that learning component within the organization, any kind, right? But it's not like just going through training, but it's about figuring out how do you put to use that new knowledge. But then you build capabilities when you create permissions, or like you shape permissions for people to come up with new solutions to existing problems, or like to well-defined or like well-documented problem. But that permission then it's very individual. Like, am I driven enough to go a step ahead, or am I driven enough to do this differently for the benefit of customers and the organization? And then that touches on the culture, because culture is not something we can measure. It's so soft. It's something that is cultivated every day by our own individual and collective actions, norms, behaviors, beliefs. So it is a combination of both that, like, I'm just exploring. Where do we start? What do we do? And how do we build? I feel like one could be the bricks, the other one could be the cement between the bricks that connects it all. So the fiber, so like that's why I'm also trying to understand from people who have lived professional in the corporate world for a while, and to learn from you guys as well.
Okay, let me give you an example. One of the corporations has trained up 30,000 employees on entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So starting with capabilities without putting the culture and the energy behind it, I think it doesn't work. Whereas starting the movement, starting the passion, starting that kind of momentum, let's do something. This is why you involve the feelings of people and the enthusiasm, and you show them the goal, and you show them the way to get to that goal. The capabilities can be added as you go. So you pick up capability by capability as you go. And now that we talk about it, I'm pretty clear that that's what I would start with. So culture, behaviors, and just get the people energetically and with their minds and hearts into it. And that's the most difficult part.
Yeah, exactly. And then this brings me to, when you do investments, you don't want to put all your eggs into one basket, right? You don't want to invest only in one kind of, company or type of investment. And same, like you cannot expect huge returns if you only do the training, because even the training is an investment. So you have to see this as a systematic problem, and then have a combination of interventions that complement each other in order to position the organization for success, the employees for success, and then the customers or the beneficiaries, or the citizens, because depends on which sector you are. You need to innovate anywhere. But then you mentioned the training of 30,000 employees on intrapreneurship. I think nowadays it's very easy, or easier, to give people the AI tools and let people train themselves on whatever they are curious about. And this brings me to that other part of conversation that I want to touch with you, and that is like the AI. Like, how do we bring AI into the innovation process?
Oh, you bring it big time. And I was getting to that as well. So all that effort of training people up and having them sit in a classroom, now it's solved by the AI who sits next to them. But I think in order for people to actually uh, learn effectively, they need a hands-on experience. So you can now combine that with an AI that sits next to you. You have a specific problem. You start solving it, and the AI coaches you as you go. So it observes you and it gives you the tips, and it takes you along the way. So it's much easier. For example, an intrapreneurship program back in the day before the LLMs would last for usually 6 to 8 weeks, because you had to go step by step. You had to explain. Whereas nowadays, you can just have that assistant, the AI assistant, and say, okay, you've done step A, so now we move to step B, and this is why, and do it, and I'll observe you, and then I would will provide feedback and give you all the necessary input there and then. And that's why it's powerful, because it's there and then. Whereas if you do it separately, before LLMs, you would sit in a classroom, learn something 8 weeks, and then afterwards, maybe you could use that knowledge later on, but maybe there will be a gap between that and you would forget everything you learned. So that learning is now gone, investment gone, and you get to the problem or to something you want to achieve in terms of solving a problem or coming up with some implement a solution, and you don't know how to do it. So now the LLMs can bring that together and compress it in time. So that's how you achieve like almost like a capsule of experience that will give you the basics, and then you repeat it, you repeat it, you repeat it, and you become proficient.
So we're still keeping the human at the center of innovation. We're not delegating innovation to the AI tools.
Well, we can argue on what we delegate and what we don't delegate. So I think that's where the devil is hidden. What you delegate and how you delegate. Obviously, if you outsource everything to AI, then um, you shouldn't complain about the outcome, because it will be just like the next company's outcome, and everything will look the same. So if you take the human out, it will be just the slop, innovation slop, let's call it. But if you are wise about where you bring in and what AI you bring in, then you probably have a marriage made in heaven.
So how do we still how do you see in a long-term future, how do we keep the human at the center of innovation and AI long-term supports us in innovating processes?
I don't have the answer, because I don't know whether in a month's time or in a year's time, AI will try to prompt itself to be innovative, and how that might pan out. So we don't know what intelligence and what kind of reasoning capabilities AI will have in the future. So it might be that the human will go altogether. We don't know. But I think the most important problem that we need to solve in that situation, and the most urgent one, is that what does the human do then? Because the robots can do all the mechanical work, the AI can do the business as usual easily, it can do the innovation, so what's left for us?
I think what we need to maintain is the trigger, the activation, and that is that initial prompt. The robots can do, but I want to believe that, as Eugene Ivanov said in one of the episodes, we, the humans, have the problems, not the AI. So if we have the problems, then we will be the ones who will have that initial idea or the vision of how that solved problem would look and feel like. So I want to believe that we are going to maintain that agency as long as we have that power to trigger, to prompt the solution. Because if we don't ask, I want to believe that AI won't be able to come up on its own.
Yes, I agree, and I think problems will always be there. We'll have problems of one nature or the other. And yes, as long as we can express those problems, I think we will have many little helpers to help us solve them.
I look forward to that kind of future because I do want to have things to do.
Yes, exactly.
Marta, this was a wonderful conversation, as all the other conversations. And before I let you go, as you may know by now, I love concluding these conversations with a question that is still puzzling you. So, like a lifetime in innovation space, and I'm certain that you still have questions that are unanswered about the innovation, with or without AI. So, what is one such question that either keeps you up at night or just puzzles you that you don't have the answer to yet, and you would love to pass this and ask the audience of this podcast to answer it for you?
Sure. So I do keep thinking what happens to us humans when AI takes over so many parts of our jobs, even full jobs, because there will be a mass of people who will be freed up, shall we say it in an elegant way, of their duties. So we will be left with more time maybe and with nothing to worry about. So what how can we use our innovative power and our skills as innovators to solve the biggest problems of society, of humanity? How we sort out the society when everyone is free, when AI does everything or mostly everything? What will happen then? And how do we get there in a way that is positive for humanity? So I know these are big questions, but I think trying to improve the human condition is a worthy cause, and it should be possible to solve it creatively, but we need to get cracking. And if anyone has any good ideas of a way to start or a way to go, then I would love to hear about it.
As someone who came to the corporate innovation space from international development, post-conflict reconstruction, and philanthropy, I can vouch how many unsolved global humanity problems are still out there that we need to figure out. So yeah, I'm curious to see what people will have to share on your question. And this is a very, very great question to ask. Marta Jakab, thank you so much for being my guest today. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to a lot of conversations like this in the future.
Thank you, Illyrian. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to it too.
Have you watched the movie Jerry Maguire by any chance? If you do, you will probably remember one of its most iconic scenes. The one when Jerry asks his only remaining client, Rod, what he can do for him. Rod doesn't give him a simple business answer. Instead, he galvanizes him into a very raw and honest intensity because he demands very honestly, "Show me the money." Rod makes Jerry yell this until he's breathless, and only when Jerry reaches this level of total and vocal commitment, Rod concludes, "Congratulations, you're still my agent." I couldn't help but recall this scene after my energizing conversation with Marta. Because in innovation, and especially in corporate one, very often we tend to start with share your idea, but we are not always ready to show the money for those ideas to come to life. Marta figured this out. If the business unit leaders were willing to allocate budget to the messy and uncertain process of innovation, then they were proving to her and everybody around that they were committed to solving something important. So leaders, if you are leading an innovation process in your enterprise, with no matter how incremental or transformative this can be, make sure that you do have budget allocated to it, because this is how you are communicating to the teammates, to everybody in the organization, how committed you are to the innovation. This is how you are communicating your leadership. And this is how you're building trust. So don't start with the ideas, start with the problem, and ensure that there are resources to support the implementation. This is how you yell your commitment to the future. And this is my key takeaway from the conversation with Marta. Now, as is the tradition of this podcast, we love concluding this with a question that is directed to you. And Marta's question is really timely and edges into the field of strategic foresight. It is a question that each one of us will face and we need to face. And in absolute honesty, this is just the start of a very strategic conversation for the years to come. What Marta is curious to know is, as AI takes over more of our work, what happens to us? What do we do with our innovative power when the machines are doing the heavy lifting? How do we direct our energy towards the problems of humanity, bigger ones, and how do we get there in a way that is good for all of us? Marta doesn't have an answer. I do not. How about you? Share your thoughts and comments in DMs or via video message, in which case tag us so we can follow with you. This is a conversation that doesn't end here. It's something that starts, and we're waiting. And last but not least, thank you for listening to us. Your comments, your shares, your reviews, your feedback is really what fuels us to make sure that we bring better and better conversations about activating innovation to you. So thank you for listening to the podcast. I'm your host, Ileriana Kachaniku, and until the next episode, stay curious and keep activating.